are back, so let's run it back. Welcome to your weekly weekend recap of professional, college, to everything in between. The NFL opened up their season last week, and it was week 2 of college football back in action. KU football is undefeated to start the season, so who would ever thought I'd be saying those words? With more KU athletic success from volleyball starting their season off strong, the MLB commissioner announced some new rules to shake up the game, as the U.S. Open has some new reigns on the throne with Serena Williams' retirement, and the MLS is heating up as the season winds down. So let's run it back with KU football overtime win against West Virginia.
For the first time since 2011, Kansas football is undefeated through 2 weeks. But how exactly did we get here? Now let's take a deep look. First, obviously, let's point out the obvious. The 2 games that they played, the Tennessee Tech win, they won 56-10 at the booth, and then traveled to Morgantown, West Virginia to take care of business against the Mountaineers. Now let's talk a little bit about the defense of the Kansas Jayhawks. Obviously, leading tacklers, transfer Rich Miller with 18. Kenny Logan been huge for Kansas, also with 14 tackles, and Lonnie Phelps with 9. Now, let's move on just a little bit to an anchor of the defense, in my personal opinion. If you watch both the games, you can tell. Jacoby Bryant made 2 huge plays for Kansas. Obviously, the block PAT going all the way back to the house against Tennessee Tech. And then, of course, the pick 6. We've all seen it with the slow motion. It was awesome to beat West Virginia, to send it home. And that obviously, that pick 6, maybe you weren't thinking of all the importance, but it actually did make Kansas the highest scoring offense in the country. As crazy as it does sound, Kansas is leading the country through 2 weeks in points per game with 55.5. And let's talk about how we're there. Jalen Daniels, the best player on this Kansas offense so far through 2 games, getting a little bit of Heisman hype, over 430 yards of passing, 4 touchdowns, just that 1 bad interception against Tennessee Tech. We move on from that. Jalen Daniels has been the guy through the air, the guy on the ground. He's found everything. Another guy that's been important on the ground, Devin Neal, the Lawrence native, plays baseball here, plays football here. Pretty dang good at both, in my opinion. Devin Neal, 14 carries, 4 touchdowns for Kansas. I'd say that's pretty efficient, 10.7 yards a carry for Devin Neal. He's been great. Another guy that's been great, Sevian Morrison, a transfer. Been great, like I said. 2 touchdowns on just 14 carries as well. He's been another good guy on the running attack. Now, Kansas, 2-0, taking on Houston. They're 1-1. They lost to Texas Tech in overtime last week. I'd be a crazy man if I said they couldn't win it, but now we'll throw it to Sydney Clark, who is kind of crazy.
I don't know if I would call me the crazy one after your Rams lost 31-10, but will they run it back-to-back? I don't know. But college football is back, but is Bama back? Let's see what Carter has to say.
What's up, guys? I'm Carter McKinnon. This week was a crazy week in college football. First, we'll look at the game in Austin between Texas and Alabama. Although Texas was leading for most of this game, reigning Heisman Trophy winner Bryce Young led the comeback to defeat the Longhorns 20-19. Now, let's move on to another overtime thriller between Pittsburgh and Tennessee. Wide receiver Cedric Tillman was the difference for Tennessee. He totaled 9 receptions for 162 receiving yards and the game-winning touchdown in overtime to prevail 34-27. Let's continue the theme of overtime as we head into our next game. Baylor and BYU met in a crazy night game which involved 3 missed field goals. BYU scored first in double overtime and the defense would hold on to win 26-20. Now, let's talk some upsets. Appalachian State defeated number 6 ranked Texas A&M 17-14. Marshall defeated number 8 Notre Dame 26-21. And lastly, Georgia Southern defeated Nebraska 45-42. This result caused Nebraska's head coach Scott Frost to be fired. That's all for this week in college football. Back to you, Sydney.
Dak's out. Packers are 0-1. There was one time game. The Bengals and Steelers were a cat with 9 lives. And is this a new era for Vikings football? The NFL kicked off their season last week, and things are already heating up. Jackson, let's run it back.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the first installment of Fourth and Bez. I'm Jackson Bezdek with kind of a hoarse voice, and today we will be going over my 4 biggest takeaways from Week 1 of the NFL season. Let's get right into it. I want to start with the best player in the league, and that is Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs do not seem to be missing a beat from last year, as their offense absolutely decimated the Arizona Cardinal defense. Mahomes threw for 360 yards, 5 touchdowns, and a passing rating of 144.2, all of which led the league. Oh, and hey, that number 10 that scored their last touchdown, not Tyreek Hill. That's Isaiah Pacheco, their new stud running back out of Rutgers. After a summer of everyone worrying about how the Chiefs will survive without Hill, they proved to everyone that there are still plenty of weapons in that Andy arsenal. The Chiefs are on a revenge tour. They have reloaded, and it is scary. Kansas City rolls over the Cards 44-21. Let's head over to the NFC, where last week on Playmakers, I had a prediction that shocked some people, but might not be too bad. The Minnesota Vikings will win the NFC North. They looked flawless last weekend against the Green Bay Packers with a big-time game from the league's best receiver, Justin Jefferson. Please don't talk to me about anyone other than Cooper Kupp for that title. Jay Jettis had 9 catches for 184 yards and 2 tutties. Minnesota stomps on Green Bay 23-7. Now for our craziest game of the weekend, the Pittsburgh Steelers against the reigning AFC champs, the Cincinnati Bengals. What the heck was going on in this game? Burrow had 5 turnovers, the most of his career. Mitch Trubisky couldn't move the ball if he put it in a shopping cart and rolled it down a hill, and it seemed like both kickers had the other team's money line in a parlay. Jamar Chase was unreal, scoring what could have been the game-winning touchdown if the PAT wasn't blocked. Both teams missed kicks in OT, the Bengals punted for some reason, and then the Steelers went right down and actually made a field goal. Who would have thought? Pittsburgh squeaks by Cincinnati 23-20. And finally, the Monday night affair, Russell Wilson's homecoming, first time to get a peek at New Look Denver, and lo and behold, Geno Smith came in to ruin the party. While Geno and the Seattle defense actually looked pretty competent, the coaching by Nathaniel Hackett was questionable at best down the stretch for Denver. With the ball at the Seattle 46-yard line and a minute left with all 3 timeouts, the Broncos decided to not go for it, burn the clock all the way down to 20 seconds, and kick an NFL record 64-yard field goal. Obviously, that didn't go in because that is absurd and would have literally broken the internet. But instead, that bizarre decision-making by Hackett and crew was what did break the internet. Probably should have given the ball to the guy making $256 million with a Super Bowl ring, but hey, I'm just a college kid in a quarter zip. Seattle spoils Denver's grand opening, 17-16, and that'll do it for this week. I will see you all next Tuesday to talk some more pigskin. Let's throw it over to Chad to see what's popping on the diamond this weekend.
Thanks, Jackson. From the sport that's just starting up to the one that's finishing, let's catch up on This Week in Baseball. The biggest news of the week came on Friday when Commissioner Rob Manfred announced a new set of rule changes to be implemented next season. These changes include a pitch timer, limits on defensive shifts, and bigger bases. In hopes of improving the pace of play, the league is now opting to enforce a strict pitch clock. Pitchers will have a 15-second timer with the bases empty and a 20-second timer with runners on base. Pitchers are also allowed 2 disengagements from the rubber for each batter. Consequences for violations of these new rules include automatic balls added to the count and free bases given to runners. Major League Baseball has been testing this rule out in the minor leagues this season, and, on average, game time has decreased by 26 minutes. The next rule change focuses on defensive shifts. The new rule says that there may be a minimum of 4 players on the infield and only 2 on each side of second base at a given time. Infielders are also not allowed to switch sides. They must stay at their position from batter to batter. This year, the league's batting average on balls in play is .291, which is 6 points lower than 2012 and 10 points lower than 2006. The league hopes to promote more action on balls in play with an emphasis on showcasing each player's athleticism. The last change has to do with the bases, as the league will increase the base size from 15 to 18 inches square. This change is made with the hopes of reducing collisions on the bases, especially those where pitchers and first basemen race hitters to the bag at high speed. Perhaps the most polarizing possible rule change that was loomed over the season included an automatic strike zone, which was not voted on by the Joint Competition Committee and will not be implemented in 2023. Now, let's check in on the standings heading into the final 3 weeks of the season. Division battles across the league are bringing fans that heated competitive feel of October baseball a month early this season. At the All-Star break, it looked like the Yankees would cruise to their 20th AL East championship after firing out the gates with a 64-28 record. Instead, their August collapse has kicked the door wide open for the red-hot Toronto Blue Jays and back-to-back division champion Tampa Bay Rays to fight for the division crown. The Yankees have 2 series with both Boston and Baltimore and 1 series with Toronto left on their schedule to hold off their charging competitors. Now, let's head on over to the NL East, where 2 heavyweights are trading punches with a month to go. The reigning World Series champion Atlanta Braves are 7-2 in September and are now only 1 game back from the New York Mets. Both teams have enjoyed incredibly successful seasons thus far, but only one can be crowned division champion and, more importantly, receive a first-round bye in the playoffs. Mark your calendars for the next time these 2 face off, September 30th to October 2nd in Atlanta, the second to last series of the season. This will be some must-watch TV without a doubt. Thanks for tuning in to This Week in Baseball, but before I let you go, let's throw it around the diamond for the best 3 moments of the week.
Got him! Zach Gallen has set down 11 consecutive Brewers. 1-1 from Jansen. There you go! Left field! We got a tie ball game! Giddy up, baby! Giddy up! Giddy pitch to Albert Pujols. Here it comes. Albert sends one out to deep right center. It's at the wall. Gone! He's done it! 697. A two-run homer to put the Cardinals on top. He's all alone. Fourth place in home runs in Major League history.
Hey there, new car owner. You might be ready to hit the road, Speed Racer, but there's a few things you should know before getting behind the wheel. Don't worry, Jimmy. Let's start with D for direction. Every driver needs to know his directions when hitting the road. Without them, you may end up in some godforsaken country you never knew existed. O is for observations. When you finally get behind the wheel, you best know who and what are around you. So it's probably a good idea to finally clean that windshield, Jimmy. Lastly, we come to G, gratitude. It's a privilege to own a car in these trying times. So letting your neighbor in on the highway is just one example of how not to be a total ass when you jump on the turnpike. All right, Jimmy, you now know what it takes to be a competent driver. Good luck, you lovable scamp.
Sports gambling has become a serious problem with young adults, especially college students. The get-rich-quick nature of social media has led to the amplification of these feelings, making it feel like you are less of a person since everyone else is having fun making their bets. The fact is that gambling addiction is a mental illness. Mental illness can happen to anyone, and you aren't any less of a person for dealing with it. Please contact the NCPG hotline if you or a loved one is dealing with a gambling addiction.
KU Volleyball's finish in the Sweet 16 last season lit a fire underneath their belt as they opened up their season undefeated, suffering just their first loss of the season this past weekend. Let's go to Abby for more.
Thanks, Sydney. Last week, the number 19 Kansas Volleyball was 6-0 as they played the Kansas City Roos on September 7th, where they won 3-1. Kansas lost the first set but secured the next three.
Well, obviously, the way we ended the first set was very disappointing. Those are sets you have to close out, especially on the road. But then our response after the first set was defensively was very good. Pass and serve was good. So we played more to our style, but certainly you don't want to fall behind one set on the road when you had a chance to close it out.
Next up, the undefeated Jayhawks played in the Kansas Invitational on September 8th and 9th. Up first for Kansas was the Wichita State Shockers for the home opener. Kansas won in straight sets to extend their win streak 7-0.
Yeah, it's definitely a commitment because those games can be long, but the motivation is just that every game, no matter what game it is, we're getting better. We have a very specific focus every game, and I feel like that kind of helps us stay focused throughout the whole game because, I mean, 3 sets, it is hard to win in 3 sets, but just keeping our eyes on the prize.
On September 9th, Kansas snapped their undefeated streak as UNLV defeats Kansas 3-1. UNLV took the first 2 sets, but Kansas avoided a straight sweep by winning the 3rd set. UNLV won the 4th set to win the match. Next, number 23 Kansas hosts the Jayhawk Classic on September 15th through 17th, where they will face Lipscomb, UCF, and Omaha. I'll kick it to Tom to recap the U.S. Open.
The U.S. Open has concluded, and it was a fantastic week of tennis where 2 players made history. On the women's side, Iga Swiatek made history by being the first Polish woman to win the U.S. Open. On the men's side, Carlos Alcaraz made history being the youngest player to win the U.S. Open at 19 years old. Alcaraz played 3 5-set matches in a row to make it to the final. The points were incredible, and his court coverage was spectacular. The future is bright in tennis for Carlos Alcaraz, as he is now the new world #1 player. Casper Ruud became the first Norwegian player to make the U.S. Open final after having a fantastic tournament. Caroline Garcia won the Cincinnati Open title and built on that momentum by making the semifinals of the U.S. Open. That will do it for today's Tennis Talk. After this break, we'll be back with Emily Baldwin to give us an update on the world of MLS.
For our last segment today, let's finish with some soccer, specifically the MLS. First off, we saw 4 red cards get handed out on Saturday. The first to Walker Zimmerman from Nashville in the 97th minute because of a handball in the box. He was already carrying a yellow card from earlier in the match, which led to his red card. Nashville and LA Galaxy ended up tying their game due to a 99th minute penalty kick for LA Galaxy from that handball in the box. Now, if you're a Nashville fan, I'm sure that wasn't the ending you were hoping for, but if you're an LA Galaxy fan, I hope you watched till the end. Matias Vera was also dealt a red card for the Houston Dynamo, but their game against Sporting KC ended in a 0-0 tie, giving Sporting KC a point on the road. However, it might be too late for Sporting KC as they currently sit in 12th place in the West, so it doesn't look like they'll be making a playoff run this season. One upset we saw this weekend was FC Dallas taking down number 1 LAFC. Former FC Dallas player Ryan Hollings had received a red card in just the 13th minute of the game for LAFC. Just before the half, LAFC set a nice lob over the top of FC Dallas to make it 1-0. Later in the game, Jesus Ferreira scored 2 goals for FC Dallas, one on a sneaky free kick and another free kick just 3 minutes later, helping Dallas gain another 3 points and take a 2-1 dub. Jesus Ferreira is now tied for most goals scored in a single season for FC Dallas, and he is also sitting in 4th for the Golden Boot race this season. Another big game in the West was Seattle taking down number 2 Austin FC in a 3-0 win with 2 goals from Raul Ruidiaz and an own goal. Austin FC on a 3-game losing streak, not looking great heading into the postseason. They'll play Real Salt Lake on Wednesday to hopefully figure out everything before the regular season ends on October 9th. If Austin wins or draws against RSL Wednesday, they'll secure their spot in the playoffs. As for the East, Charlotte was a part of the Red Card Club this weekend as well, but ended up coming away with a 1-0 win regardless against NYCFC. In another exciting game this past weekend, Philadelphia continued to show their dominance in the league this weekend with a 5-1 win at home over Orlando City. This game had so many good goals, I had to show them all. Philadelphia continues to sit comfortably in first place, dominating the Eastern Conference. They are now 10 points ahead of second place and have already secured a playoff spot. And finally, Cincinnati destroyed San Jose with a 6-0 win, with 5 of those 6 goals being scored in the second half, and 3 of them were scored by Cincinnati forward Brenner. With that win, Cincinnati is back in the playoff picture, currently sitting in 6th in the East. San Jose, however, is sitting in last place in the West and will be eliminated from playoff contention if they lose or draw to Colorado on Wednesday. Now here's a quick look at some games coming up tonight. Montreal and Chicago will play at 6:30 p.m. this evening, followed by Miami and Columbus, and Minnesota and LAFC both kicking off at 7 p.m. The Houston Dynamo will take on New England at home at 7:30, and lastly, Sporting KC and DC United will play here in Kansas at 7:30 as well. For my game of the day, tune in to see LAFC and Minnesota battle it out. Both teams are currently playoff bound, but anything can happen in these next few weeks. That's all I have for you guys today. Now let's kick it to Sydney for our play of the week.
So what was the funniest run it back of the weekend? For me, it was the Battle of Texas versus Alabama, or you could call it the Battle of the Horns Down sign. Nick Saban had a few choice words to tell his players about throwing down the famous hand gesture against Texas, and it was funny because it all happened to be caught on live TV.
Steps up, and Card lets it go, and incomplete. And that's a ball game, folks. Alabama comes back, and they defeat Texas on the road 20-19 in a thriller. 19 in a thriller.
Now that's all we have for you today. Thanks for running it back with us, and we will see you next Tuesday to recap some of the best moments in sports.